Today, we're continuing our series about the common table, and it's an idea that we kicked off last Easter, last Sunday, which was Easter Sunday. And, there's many different ways to keep time in life. So one of the more common ways to keep time is by the new year, right? So January 1 comes around and we celebrate a new year and we kind of keep track of it the whole year, right? Now, you can also keep time by a new month or a new week as it goes by. That's another way to keep time. For some of us, we keep time, many of us actually, we keep time by birthday. Like that's just another way of tracking our life and what that looks like. So when your birthday rolls around, you kind of consider what that looks like for where you're at in life. There's also, when you're growing up, you keep time by a school schedule. So if you have kids in your house, you also keep time by a school schedule. And so, you're looking at fall. And there's just lots of different ways that we keep time in life. And one of those ways is actually the church has its own calendar. And it's a way to keep time as you go through your life and go through different seasons. And so that's not a thing that we're really connected with in kind of our stream and our tradition as Sought Church. But for many people it is. It's a different way to keep time. And one of the things that I love about that is I love coming back to that every once in a while because in the church calendar, Easter is not just a day. Easter is an entire season. And so it begins on Easter Sunday, and then it continues for several weeks. It's called Eastertide. And it goes on and on. And I love that idea that Easter's not just a day, it's a season. What we're doing is we're reminded that the resurrection not only happened, that thing that we celebrate on Easter Sunday, but it continues and is happening. And so we continue to reflect on it and its meaning for our life and how that affects us. And I was reminded of that this morning. I opened up my Bible app and the verse of the day was one of Jesus' statements from John chapter 11. He said, I am right now. In this moment, you don't have to wait till the end. Right now, I am the resurrection and the life. Like that's something that's happening right here and now. It's not something that's off in the future. It's not something that we just look at in the past. It's happening right here and right now, this resurrection. And so as we continue this idea of discussing a common table, what we're looking at is this continuation of the good news and of Easter having an effect on our lives. Because too often what we can do is celebrate the goodness and the excitement and the power that we see in Jesus rising from the grave on Easter Sunday, and then the very next week kind of just go back to normal like it was only that one day. No, it's still happening, and it still matters. And so we're going to take some time to reflect on this idea of the common table. In one of the Gospels, this is how one writer sums up Jesus' life. He says this: the disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. Like there were a lot. We couldn't fit them all in the book. You had to be there, I guess. And so, in addition to the ones that are written in this, but these are written so that you may continue to believe. Continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in Him, you will have life by the power of His name. And so it's not just about, hey, that was great on Easter Sunday. It's about continuing to believe the good news of Easter. Continuing to believe that on Easter Sunday we celebrate Jesus risen from the dead and that He defeated death and sin, and that's awesome. But we also celebrate that because Jesus rose from the dead, we can trust everything that He did and said, and we continue to believe in it. And by continuing to believe in it, we have life by the power of His name. And so I just want us to lean into this idea and this passion and this excitement around Easter. And we're going to do that by continuing this series about the common table. And in fact, I'm really excited because we're actually starting what we're calling common table groups. And they kick off this week. And there are 2 times that you can join a common table group. One is on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And that's actually at our Epic Church campus. So down in the southwest part of town, Warm Springs and Durango. That's at 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights. And then at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday nights, you can join a group here in downtown. And that's actually going to be at my house. And so, if you need directions, come ask me. I'll give you my address. And we're going to come and we're going to do a group at my house. Now, if you come to the group at my house, we're going to gather around a table. My table will be covered in old food, SpaghettiOs. There will be toys on the floor because that's usually what my table looks like. And so you can come and you can come and hang out with us. And what it's going to be is we're going to spend some time just discussing this idea of a common table and how that affects our lives and what it looks like for us to join the common table and to build a common table. We're actually going to eat together, and so I'm asking everybody to just bring something to share, bring an appetizer. Doesn't have to be a big meal, just bring an appetizer. And some of you love to cook. Cook us something fun and bring it. Some of you don't know how to cook. Please don't cook us anything. Go to Smith's and then share it from there. And so that's what we're doing, and we're going to hang out. We're going to eat together. It's relaxed. It's laid back, and we're actually going to be going through this journal called The Common Table. And I love the subtitle of this journal, Inviting Strangers to Become Family. And it's a 6-week journal, and I love it. I'm so excited to do it. I cannot wait to go on this journey and have these conversations with you. And so we've got these available today. All we're asking is that you help us out by giving a $10 donation. That just covers the cost of this. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to turn it around. We're going to give it to missions. So that really helps us out, though, to help cover that. And I've lost my train of thought. Hold on, it'll come. So we'll be going through this book. Now, if you go, well, I don't have $10, don't worry about it. We want you to go on this journey with us. But we've got those at a sign up at our concierge cart today. And you might be asking yourself, why do groups? Why I come to church once a week? I'm already here on Sunday night. Do I really need twice? Is that a thing? People do that? And I just want to tell you why I enjoy getting together in a group. First of all, it's for my own personal growth. On Sundays, I get to share, I get to talk, I get to teach. I love that part of it. That's something that I love to do. But my perspective is limited because I'm limited. And so in groups, I learn and I grow. Because one of the things that I genuinely believe about God is that God is too big for any one person to have a complete perspective on. And so what happens is that you come and you share your experience and your perspective, and I gain a better picture of God because of it. And I gain a better picture on life because of it, because together I can add from what you know and what you've seen and what you've heard, and I can add that to my own experience and my own picture. And so all of a sudden my perspective gets wider because of you. And I know God a little bit more because of you. And then, of course, I get to know you a little bit more. And so I love the growth that comes from that. And then the second thing that I love that comes from groups is I just love the friendship that comes out of groups. We're pretty laid back on Sunday nights, and so we do get time to hang out. But it's just more time to talk about. You get in the middle of the week. Hey, how's it going? To share a few more stories, and it really helps build those friendships. And so I'm really excited to start that. Like I said, this coming Wednesday or Thursday, and we would love for you to be a part of one of those groups. Let me just recap what we talked about on Easter. And then we're going to push forward here on this series, The Common Table. So on Easter, we celebrated Jesus rising from the dead. He's no longer in the grave. And we talked about how the cross becomes our common table. How in Jesus, he's trying to make this way for everyone to be able to seek God and be able to connect with God. And because Jesus risen from the dead, he has the authority and the power to make this table for everyone. Jesus is in charge of the guest list, and everyone is invited. It doesn't matter who you are or where you find yourself or where you've come from. You could be a skeptic, you could be a believer, you could be a stripper, an addict, a perfectionist, you could be going to church your whole life, you could have never darkened the doors of it. It doesn't matter. Everyone is invited to this table, and that makes some people uncomfortable. But Jesus goes, I have the power and the authority. Well, how do we know you have the power and authority to do that? Well, I'll prove it to you. I will die, and then 3 days later, I will rise again. That's how you know I have the power and the authority. And so Jesus takes this cross and he makes this common table for all of us where we're all invited to come and to seek him. And so that's the idea that we kind of started with on Easter Sunday. And today I want to continue that idea, and I want to present to you this thought. That kind of good news, it's what we call the gospel. That kind of good news doesn't need a pulpit. The gospel needs a table. The gospel doesn't need a pulpit. The gospel needs a table. Now, I want you to understand, I know this doesn't look like a fancy pulpit. It looks like a black music stand. But this is what you would call a pulpit, and I stand behind one every week. And so I love doing it. I love doing it, but the gospel doesn't need a pulpit. The gospel needs a table. And so I want to talk about that idea and what that looks like for our own lives. And so tonight we're going to read from the Gospel of John. If you have a Bible, you can turn to John 21. If you don't have a Bible, we would love to give one to you. We've got some out of the concierge cart. It's yours to keep. Also got it on your smart device. Just go to bible.com/app, and then we'll have the scripture on the screen here behind me. But John chapter 21. John is one of 4 accounts of Jesus' life that are included in the gospel. John was one of Jesus' closest followers, and he wrote down some things about Jesus' life so that we could all know about that and remember that and be aware of this good news. And so we're going to read from his gospel and what it says. And this is the very end. This is like the last chapter of his book and one of the stories that wraps it up here. And so John chapter 21, starting in verse 1. Later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee, and this is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there: Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the Twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples. And Simon Peter said, I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they all said. I just got stuck there because I don't know what's going on in Peter's life. I don't know if he's just frustrated. I don't know, is he still trying to figure things out? And he's just like, that's it. I'm going fishing. I'm going fishing. We'll come too, they all said. So they went out in the boat, but they all caught nothing. They caught nothing all night. And at dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. And he called out, hey fellas, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. And then he said, throw your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll get some. And so they did. And they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. And the disciple that Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord. And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he stripped it off to work, and he jumped into the water and he headed to shore. And the others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards out from the shore. And when they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them. Fish cooking over a charcoal fire and some bread. Bring some of the fish you've just caught, Jesus said. And so Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net ashore. There were 153 large fish. I don't know if that's a fisherman's story or if that's how it goes, but there were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. Now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. And then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the third time that Jesus had appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. Now I want you to notice right here, we get this, we're taking this metaphor of a common table, right? Jesus inviting us to this table. And Jesus right here has built this makeshift table on a beach. He's got breakfast laid out for everybody at the beginning of the day. And he's inviting the disciples to come and join him on this table on the beach at dawn. I mean, what a great way to start the day, you know? Breakfast right there, ready to go, hanging out with Jesus at the table. And after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied, you know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. And a third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time, and he said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, then feed my sheep. I think this is such an amazing story as we wrap up Jesus' life and we look at the continued effects of the resurrection and this continuing season of Easter. It says this is the third time that Jesus has appeared to the disciples. It seems like the disciples are still trying to grasp what it is that it means that Jesus is risen from the dead. And Jesus keeps appearing as like, hey, it's not a mistake. It's not a dream. It's not a hallucination. This is a real thing. I'm here eating breakfast with you. That happened. You saw me crucified, and now you've seen me risen from the grave. Like, that's a real thing that happened. Let's just continue to connect over that and continue to ponder that and see what that means for life. And so, you know, they're looking at the continued effects of Easter, and it's just so interesting to me that Jesus chooses to do it around this table. And all of the interaction with the disciples and with Peter. Because you know, the disciples had abandoned Jesus. They weren't there at the cross. They left Jesus at his deepest need. And Peter outright denied Jesus 3 times on that night. And so Jesus could have come to them. And he could have gotten into that bully pulpit. He could have gotten on his soapbox. Look at you guys. Why'd you let me down? Come on, you got to do better than that. We're trying to change the world here. You can't be like that. You know, he could have scolded them. He could have got there and he could have taught them. I mean, Jesus has spent 3 years teaching and he's a master teacher, but he could have just got there and been like, all right, I get it. You guys are just that stupid. Let me go over it again, you know. And he could have taught them again. But he doesn't do that. He comes and he says, hey, come and join me at this table. I've got breakfast all ready for you. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about life and let's talk about what you're experiencing and what you're going through right now. And he has this interaction with Peter that I just find so interesting. 3 times Peter denied him. Hey, aren't you one of Jesus' followers? No, don't know the guy. That's not me. Really? Because I mean, you sound like you have that same similar kind of accent. You sound like you're from there. No, that's not me. I don't know that man. Man, you look like the one they call Peter. I think you've been around him a bunch. I saw you with him in the garden. And he just starts cursing. No, I don't bleeping know that guy. 3 times he denies him. And then Jesus comes and And he comes to Peter with this gentle, beautiful, yet challenging interaction. And he asks him this question: Peter, do you love me? Knowing full well what Peter's done and kind of where he's at now, and I can just imagine Peter kind of wrestling with that question, knowing full well what he's done, what he's been through. Peter, do you love me? It's like Jesus is offering this beautiful invitation back to Peter. Like, hey, Peter, I know what happened, but I'm here. I'm back from the dead, and it really happened. Do you love me? And Peter gets this opportunity to respond to that invitation. Yes, Jesus, I love you. And he does it 3 times. Like bringing Peter full circle back to this interaction. Peter, do you love me? Yes, I love you. Peter, do you love me? Yes, I love you. Over and over again, offering this invitation. Peter, do you love me? Because I've got a seat at the table for you. I don't know about you, but so often when I screw up, I just don't want to be around the person that I screwed up with. You know? Jesus, it's okay, Peter. I made some fish for you too. I've got a seat for you here. Do you love me? Because I love you. Come on, I set a place at the table for you. There's a seat for you. And for many of us, that's so often where we find ourselves. Where we're excited on Easter Sunday, and then a week goes by, we find ourselves asking, like, is it still for me? Is it still real? And I think Jesus is offering the same invitation to us. Yeah, let's come to the table again. Come to the table. Everything that you need is here at this table. It's real. It matters. We're living in this resurrection still. Come to the table. And so there's this invitation that happens. And then I love the idea. So just like Jesus wants to bring Peter to the table, Jesus wants to bring you to the table. And then there's this other part of the interaction with Peter that I find so interesting. Because it's the same 3 times. It's the invitation from Jesus, Peter, do you love me? And then it's Peter's response to that invitation, yes, I love you. And then from there, it goes back to then, okay, well then here's what you need to do. And so Jesus' response back to Peter is then, feed my sheep. Take care of my sheep. Feed the lambs. And so 3 times this happens. Invitation, acceptance, and then this charge. And so Jesus, yes, wants you at the table, but at the same time, Jesus wants you to bring others to the table. And I was thinking about this interaction with Peter. I don't think Jesus is saying, hey, Peter, feed my sheep. I don't think he means, hey, you and the 10 other guys. Like, would you make sure to take care of the other 10, Peter? Like, you should hang out a little more. You should eat meals together often. Like, I don't think that's what Jesus is trying to say here. I'm reminded of a story that Jesus told about a shepherd and some sheep. A shepherd is out, and he's taking care of his sheep, and he brings them back to the pen, and he's getting them all loaded up into the pen, and he starts counting them 1, 2, 3, and on and on and on, and he gets to 99, and all of a sudden, all the sheep are in the pen. But there's only one problem. He's supposed to have 100 sheep. He's got 99, and he's supposed to have 100, and Jesus is telling this story about the shepherd, and for many of us, we just go like, that's a 1% loss. Like, that's just the cost of doing business. Like, that happens sometimes. You lose one along the way. A 1% loss in business is sometimes, that's just kind of expected. That's going to happen. We're not doing too bad. But that's not what Jesus says the kingdom of God is about. That's not what Jesus says he's about. He says, no, the kingdom of God is like the shepherd who gets to 99 and realizes he should be at 100. And so he leaves the 99 to go look for the one. And so when he's saying to Peter, hey, Peter, feed my sheep, I don't think he's saying, hey, just hang out with the 99, Peter. I think what Jesus is saying is, hey, Peter, there are some sheep out in this world that I care about and that I love, and I want you to care about and love them. I want you to bring them to a place where they can lie beside streams of still water, and they can lie in fields of grass and have everything that they need. There's a seat at the table that still needs to be filled, Peter, and I need you to go out and bring those people here. Because the reality is that there are some people in your neighborhood who desperately need to know the power of Jesus and his resurrection. The good news. They're looking around at their own life and they're going, I don't know if I'm going to make it. They're watching their kids grow up. And they're going, I don't know if I have enough wisdom or enough strength to see this through all the way to the end. I don't know if we're going to make it. There's some people that are in your workplace or that you go to school with that are looking for purpose and meaning in life. Like they show up every day, but they show up because they need the paycheck. There's nothing really there for them. And they're just kind of searching around like, is this it? Is this all there is? Because it doesn't feel like this should be all there is. And they're looking for some kind of purpose and meaning and reason to believe and reason to belong and something to hope for and something to invest their lives in. There's some people that you and I pass by or even that you and I interact with. They're just lonely. They don't have a friend. And they're wondering, man, will I ever have a friend? And Jesus says to us, just like he said to Peter, please, feed my sheep. There's a place at this table. And at this table is everything they need. Everything they want. Please, do you love me? Have you accepted this invitation to come to the table? Then would you please bring someone else with you? Please feed my sheep. Please bring them to the table. Because it's here around the table. There's just something special that happens when you eat together. Janelle more than me, but eating is like a spiritual experience for Janelle. And it's true. Like there's something so grace-filled in eating together. And there's something about sitting around a table with one another, not from a place of strength or authority or not from a place of a pulpit, but just sitting down together and having a conversation and being able to connect and share about the good news. Jesus rose from the grave. And that means something for your life, and it means something for my life. And it continues to have an effect. And those conversations, I think, can only happen around a table. The gospel doesn't need a pulpit. The gospel needs a table. This kind of good news needs a table.